You know that feeling when you finally get comfortable with a piece of technology, you've learned the shortcuts, you understand its quirks, and then suddenly everything changes? It feels like we are perpetually living in that moment right now with AI. Just when we wrap our heads around GPT-4, the conversation has already shifted.
It's not just shifting, it's accelerating. We aren't just talking about the next big number anymore. We're getting into the decimals, and that's where things actually get interesting.
Right, and that's exactly what we are looking at today. We're diving into the projected roadmap of GPT-5, and specifically, this battle of the versions, 5 versus 5.1 versus 5.2. It sounds like splitting hairs, doesn't it? Like, is a point 1 update really worth a 10-minute conversation?
Oh, absolutely. In the software world, a point 1 usually means, bug fixes or a slightly cleaner interface. But in the world of large language models, those decimals represent fundamental shifts in capability. We aren't just polishing the chrome, we're changing the engine.
So let's set the baseline. Everyone is holding their breath for GPT-5. Based on what we're seeing, this is supposed to be the great leap forward. What separates the hypothetical 5 from what we're using today?
If GPT-4 is a brilliant, well-read university student who occasionally hallucinates, GPT-5 is aimed at being the expert consultant. The core difference we are looking at is reasoning. Right now, models are essentially predicting the next likely word. They are very good at mimicking logic, but they don't always do logic. GPT-5 is designed to actually think through a problem before it starts talking.
That distinction always trips people up, because when I use current models, it feels like they are thinking.
It feels like it, sure. But think of it this way. If you ask a current model a complex riddle, it solves it because it has seen similar riddles in its training data. It's recalling a pattern. GPT-5 is being built to handle novel situations, the problems it has never seen before, and apply first principles thinking to solve them. That's the 5 promise. It's raw, intellectual horsepower.
Okay, so 5 is the brain upgrade. It's smarter, deeper, less prone to making things up. So why are we already talking about 5.1 and 5.2? If 5 is the genius, what's left to improve so quickly?
This is where the comparison gets fascinating. If 5 is the brain, 5.1 is usually about efficiency and speed. You see, the problem with a massive reasoning brain is that it's slow and expensive. You don't need Einstein to make you a sandwich.
That's a good point. I don't want to wait 30 seconds and pay 50 cents just to ask the AI to correct a grammar mistake in my email.
Exactly. So, the jump to 5.1 isn't necessarily about making it smarter than 5. It's about distillation. It's about taking that massive reasoning capability and optimizing it so it runs faster, cheaper, and with less latency. It's the difference between a concept car and a production vehicle. 5 is the prototype that proves it's possible. 5.1 is the version that actually fits into your workflow without friction.
So 5.1 is the workhorse version. That makes sense. But then we get to 5.2. And in the materials we're looking at, 5.2 seems to imply a shift in nature, not just speed.
Yes. 5.2 is where we enter the era of agency.
Agency. That's a heavy word.
It is. Up until now, and even with 5 and 5.1, the paradigm is mostly chat. You type, it replies. You ask, it answers. It is passive. It waits for you. GPT-5.2 represents the shift to a model that can take action. It's not just generating text. It's interacting with other software, browsing the web autonomously to complete a multi-step goal, and perhaps even initiating tasks based on what it knows you need.
So instead of me asking, how do I plan a trip to Tokyo, and getting a text itinerary, 5.2 would, what? Book the flights?
Ideally, yes. You'd say, plan a trip to Tokyo for me, focus on sushi and jazz bars, and 5.2 would check your calendar, check flight prices, draft the booking emails, reserve tables at the restaurants, and then present you with a confirm button. It moves from being a chatbot to being an agent.
That sounds incredible, but also terrifying. I mean, Giving an AI the keys to my credit card and my calendar requires a level of trust that I'm not sure we have yet.
That's the crux of the 5.2 debate. It's the uncanny valley of trust. To make 5.2 work, the model has to be nearly hallucination-free. If it hallucinates a flight time, you miss your plane. The stakes are infinitely higher when the AI is doing, not just saying.
It also changes the user experience entirely. With 5, I'm impressed by the answer. With 5.2, I might not even read the answer, I just look at the result. It makes the AI invisible.
Precisely. And that brings up a philosophical question about the VS in this comparison. We frame it as GPT-5 versus 5.1 versus 5.2, like they are competitors. But really, they are layers of integration into our lives. 5 impresses us. 5.1 integrates with us. 5.2 replaces certain parts of our cognitive load entirely.
Let's dig into that replacing cognitive load part, because that's where the excitement usually turns into anxiety for a lot of people. If 5.2 is acting as an agent, doing the research, doing the booking, maybe even writing the code and deploying it, what is the human doing?
The optimistic view? The human becomes the conductor rather than the musician. You aren't playing the violin anymore. You're directing the orchestra. You set the strategic intent. You say, I want to build a business that sells custom sneakers, and the agent handles the logistics, the site design, the supply chain inquiries. You provide the why, and the AI provides the how.
But doesn't that atrophy our skills? I mean, if I never have to figure out the how, do I eventually lose the ability to understand the why? If I don't know how hard it is to code a website, can I really appreciate or direct the strategy of building one?
That is the million-dollar question. We might see a bifurcation in the workforce. You'll have the operators who just nudge the AI agents, the 5.2 seconds, around, and then you'll have the architects who understand the deep, underlying mechanics, the 5-level logic. The middle ground, the people who are just okay at a lot of things, might find themselves squeezed out.
It's interesting you mentioned the middle ground, because usually technology democratizes things, but here it sounds like it might polarize things.
It does both. It democratizes the output. Anyone can have a great website now, but it might concentrate the understanding. But let's look at the flip side. Think about the sheer amount of drudgery involved in modern knowledge work. Formatting data, scheduling meetings, cross-referencing files. GPT-5.1 and 5.2 are aimed squarely at killing that drudgery.
So 5.1 is the efficiency killer, and 5.2 is the task killer.
Right. And 5 is the enabler that makes it all possible. You can't have a reliable agent, 5.2, without the deep reasoning, 5. If the brain isn't smart enough, the hands will drop the ball. That's why these versions are rolled out in this specific order. They need to solve smart before they can solve fast, and they need to solve fast before they can solve autonomous.
That hierarchy makes sense. Smart, fast, autonomous. It's almost like the development of a human employee. First, you learn how to do the job correctly. Then you learn how to do it quickly. Then you get promoted to manage yourself.
That is a perfect analogy. And just like a human employee, the more autonomous it gets, the more personality or alignment matters. This is another feature of the later versions, personalization. GPT-5 might be a generic genius, but 5.2 needs to know you. It needs to know that you hate early morning flights or that you prefer concise emails.
So we are moving toward a world where my GPT-5.2 is fundamentally different from yours.
Exactly. And that creates a moat. Once you have trained your 5.2 agent on your life, your preferences, and your work history, switching to a competitor becomes incredibly hard. You aren't just switching software, you're firing a personal assistant who has been with you for years.
That's sticky. That is incredibly sticky for a tech company. But I want to go back to the reasoning aspect of 5 for a second. We've heard rumors about System 2, thinking the idea that the AI takes time to ponder. How does that change the rhythm of how we use the internet?
It slows it down, ironically. We are used to instant gratification. Google search gives you 10 million results in 0.1 seconds. But if you ask GPT-5 a serious question like, how do I restructure my company's debt? It might say, give me a minute. It might actually pause to simulate multiple scenarios.
That pause is going to be psychologically weird for us. We equate speed with intelligence in computers. If it pauses, we think it's lagging.
We'll have to retrain ourselves. A pause in a human conversation means they are thinking. A pause in a computer usually means it's broken. We have to learn that the pause is where the value is being created.
And then 5.1 comes along and tries to shorten that pause.
Or at least optimize it. Maybe it learns which parts of the problem need the deep pause and which parts can be done instantly. It's about resource management.
Looking at this roadmap 5.1, 5.2, is there a ceiling? Or is 5.2 just a stepping stone to 6?
There's always a 6. But I think the 5X era is going to be defined by utility. GPT-3 was a novelty. GPT-4 was a tool. GPT-5X will be an infrastructure. It's going to disappear into the background. You won't say, I'm using ChatGPT. It will just be the engine powering your phone, your car, your fridge, and your laptop OS.
So the ultimate victory for GPT-5.2 is that we stop talking about it?
In a way, yes. The best technology is indistinguishable from magic, and magic doesn't require a user manual. If 5.2 works as promised, it just happens. The friction disappears.
But that brings us back to the cost. Not the financial cost, but the human cost. If the friction disappears, do we lose the traction? You need friction to move forward. If everything is smooth, you're just sliding.
That's the philosophical danger. If we outsource the struggle of learning, the struggle of organizing, and the struggle of creating, what is left for us? Are we just consumers of AI-generated comfort?
Or are we liberated to focus on things we can't even imagine yet because we're currently too busy answering emails?
That's the hope. The history of technology suggests we usually find new, more complex problems to solve. We didn't stop working when the spreadsheet was invented. We just started asking harder financial questions. GPT-5.2 will likely force us to ask much harder questions.
It seems like we are standing on the edge of a very steep cliff. The view is amazing, but the drop is terrifying.
And we don't have a parachute, but we might be building a plane on the way down.
I love that image, as chaotic as it is. So, to wrap this up for our listeners, we are moving from the wow phase of AI into the work phase. GPT-5 brings the brain, 5.1 brings the speed, and 5.2 brings the hands.
And the question isn't which version is best, but are we ready to manage the hands that do the work for us?
That is the question. It's not about the version number, it's about the relationship we build with the machine. As we wait for these updates to roll out, maybe the best thing we can do is sharpen our own system too, thinking our own ability to reason, so we can keep up with what's coming.
Couldn't have said it better myself. The smarter the tool, the sharper the user needs to be.
We'll leave it there. Thanks for diving into the decimals with us. It's going to be a wild ride to 5.2.
Always a pleasure.
And to everyone listening, keep thinking. We'll catch you on the next one.